Hi friends, you're tuned in to Legal Means Business, a podcast by Leeway. We're joined by some amazing guests who help us identify how to take your legal function and career to the next level. I'm your host, Steph Smith, and we're talking all things legal ops and legal tech, as well as other critical skills needed to help you thrive in the evolving in-house arena. Don't forget, you can watch us on YouTube or listen on the go through Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy the conversation, please do hit subscribe and let us know what you think on social.
There's also really an opportunity here to help set the moral compass or the standards for the organization. So if you kind of take the ethics role and expand the how you think about that to be asking yourselves, all right, what is the right thing to do? And instead of getting into the details and creating that guiding compass for the organizations, expanding it out into environmental or social issues really provides an opportunity to build a deeper culture. So general counsel touched so many of those issues. There's an opportunity to lead, but even if that sits in a different umbrella within your organization, there's also a strong opportunity to contribute.
The global climate crisis and biodiversity breakdown demands an entirely new way of doing business. And environmental, social and governance matters, or ESG, is fast becoming a hot topic for lawyers all over the world. It's not only an increasingly necessary requirement for our planet, but it's also an opportunity for in-house lawyers to lead change in creating sustainable growth for their business. After all, sustainable business is smart business. And this is why we're delighted to have Christine Uri, Chief Legal and Sustainability Officer at ENGIE Impact, with us on the podcast today. Over her 15-plus year career, Christine has advised startups, technology companies, non-profits and global enterprises. She's launched technologies, developed leadership programs, found new revenue streams, and challenged organizations to always act in line with their values and purpose. Today, Christine helps us explore how in-house legal teams can think about and tackle ESG initiatives, regardless of the size of the team. It's an important topic, so I hope you enjoy. Hello, Christine. Pleasure to have you with us on the podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Oh, no, not at all. I'm glad you could make time for us.
Mhm.
I suppose to dive straight in, I know you work in a super interesting space, and it's
Mhm.
obviously quite a hot topic at the moment, considering the current situation and obviously global climate crisis and everything like that. So I suppose to start, could you tell us a little bit about your background, your experience, and how you've ended up where you are today?
Yeah, of course. Oh, I'm the Chief Sustainability and Legal Officer at ENGIE Impact, and my company is also dedicated to sustainability. So we work with global companies worldwide to make the plans and strategies for their sustainability transformation. What that looks like is often these days, focus on net zero and how companies can curb their carbon footprint to get to net zero. So that's my current role. But I obviously I started as a lawyer in a law firm, and I did quite a few years in that kind of just standard legal work, and then slowly worked my way into an in-house role in a sustainability company and expanded from there.
Yeah, amazing. And it was that kind of your first experience with the topic of sustainability, or where did your passion come from, and how
Yeah.
did you end up staying in the space?
Yeah, when I decided to go in-house, I was really specifically looking for a company that was very purpose-driven, that had a strong mission, that had a social good component, and that was back in 2013. And I ended up finding a company where sustainability was the driving force behind it, and really appealed to my values. And since then, I've just been building my expertise in that area, and learning how to be both a general counsel and live and breathe in a sustainability market.
Yeah, Amazing. And what does your kind of day-to-day role look like at the moment? What sort of topics would you be tackling?
Um, it looks pretty crazy. It's the beginning of January, and January always launches off like a rocket ship. So in the legal world, working more and more on trying to create new forms of contracting that enable companies to work with us on generating energy savings in a way that is efficient from a capital investment perspective. So, really kind of new ways of structuring business on the sustainability front. Everybody is probably trying to launch new goals for this year. So we're getting set both on the employee engagement front to have our employees engaged in our program and kind of excited about our purpose, and then making sure we're on track for our carbon, water, and waste goals, which we share publicly on our website. And then, like many executives, also working on COVID issues, and I do our health and safety, so that's a third hat for me. So a lot of management on that topic happening.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's certainly the case for, especially just now and over the last 1.5, 2 years for all general
Yeah.
counsel, so many hats.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Which I view that as a good thing. I think the role of general counsel and how general counsel is viewed is really expanding as general counsel. Take on more and different challenges, which they're very capable of doing. So it's great to see that role be growing in scope within organizations.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I suppose this crisis and climate at the moment is kind of brought about for the rest of the business, really brought to the forefront of what legal can do, and then it's not just within the box. Like the
Yes.
skills and things you can contribute to are really kind of much wider than what other people in the business might have traditionally expected.
Absolutely. There's so many things that general counsel between the kind of ESG things we're talking about today, and crisis management, and working with the pandemic, where general counsel has been challenged to step into new roles, and I think has been shown great success in stepping into those roles. So it's both a point of that generates craziness in our days for sure,
Hmm.
but it's also a point of opportunity to grow.
Definitely. Yeah, amazing. And so you've talked a lot about sustainability there, and anyone who follows you on LinkedIn might know that you talk a lot about ESG. For
Mhm.
those who are less familiar, what is ESG?
Uh, ESG is a set of non-financial measurements around environmental, social, and governance performance. And where you really see this come up is in investing community and in public companies, because investors are using it more and more to gauge companies' performance along with financial measurements. There's been quite a bit of research that shows companies that have a strong ESG rating do perform better over time. In general, they're just better managed companies, so it makes sense that performance would be an indicator of success. But although it really exists in that investing world, I think it also creates a great framework and touchstone for smaller companies that are looking to start their programs, because there's so many tools around it, and it also is a pretty broad umbrella between having both the environmental, the social, and the governance components, make it a broader framework to think about things in.
Yeah, totally. And I know from the kind of customer point of view as well, they're looking to work with companies that are thinking about these things and have them quite high on their agenda.
Absolutely. And I think you're really going to see that pressure go. I know we receive often from clients requests for information or diligence on various aspects in our performance, whether it be our environmental performance or how we're approaching diversity, equity, and inclusion. Certainly a lot of clients care about your governance, your ethics, how you approach anti-corruption. So we receive a lot of client inquiries, and I see this really growing, particularly in the area of carbon, because of the way that carbon accounting works. So as you see, larger companies need to measure their carbon footprint. Part of that is measuring the carbon footprint in their value chain. So there's definitely an increased expectation that from customers that companies be able to provide that information.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And you've touched on it there, but is there anything else as to why it's important for in-house counsel to be thinking about this?
I see it as a few angles. There is a straight regulatory angle where you're seeing more and more regulations come up, whether it be transparency regulations in terms of reporting, or in some cases, actual substantive requirements. So that's a pretty straightforward case where general counsel need to make sure that their companies are in compliance. There's also really an opportunity here to help set the moral compass or the standards for the organization. So if you kind of take the ethics role and expand the how you think about that, to be asking yourselves, all right, what is the right thing to do, and instead of getting into the details and creating that guiding compass for the organizations, expanding it out into environmental or social issues really provides an opportunity to build a deeper culture. Though general counsel touch so many of those issues, there's an opportunity to lead, but even if that sits in a different umbrella within your organization, there's also a strong opportunity to contribute.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of kind of collaborative work, particularly for in-house
Yes.
counsel.
Yeah, it requires the whole organization. So it involves, certainly there's a component with HR, with
Mhm.
finance, with operations, and the general counsel is just a point of that. But it's when companies started with more corporate social responsibility type programs, they lived more in a silo where you're looking at charitable donations or volunteer activities. But as we've moved forward into a world that really focuses on sustainability, it's expanded to be something that can't just live within a single point and has to be made into the entire organization and operations.
Yeah, definitely. And that's an opportunity in itself, isn't it, for the legal team to kind of integrate more into the business and use that as a kind of bonding almost as well
Yeah.
to work with.
Yeah. I mean, as a leader, I'm always trying to make sure that my counsel is completely integrated into the business, because that's how both we provide value, is by understanding we're not providing a ton of value when somebody just brings us a problem after it is already completely gone sideways. We can provide a lot more value if we know the heartbeat of the business and can prevent problems. So it's great to find those integration points for the council where there's opportunity for cross collaboration, because that keeps relationships strong. It gives points of contact across the organization that really help the legal aspects be more successful. So there's a kind of a synergy between doing those things. I think it's also really important for retaining talent. So one of the things I found is that if you can have people be able to engage on environmental, social issues, they're across the organization, all employees appreciate that and feel a greater sense of connection with their jobs. And that's definitely true for our in-house departments as well.
Christine is clear on why in-house lawyers should care about ESG, from environmental motivations to building your reputation as a strategic business advisor. And there are many reasons why in-house lawyers are well placed to lead on sustainability and ESG initiatives. Firstly, your skill set. You already have the right skills. You can measure and manage risk, and this is where sustainability and ESG start. Secondly, collaboration. Improving sustainability and ESG requires collaboration across the whole company, and you have a breadth of connections that you can leverage. Ethics. You're interested in moving the conversation from what is needed to comply to what is the right thing to do. Now is your chance to live and breathe this. Regulations. ESG regulations are increasing every day. If you don't get involved, your organisation could end up in hot water and with financial and reputational harm. Lastly, motivation. Do you want to make a difference? This is the perfect opportunity for in-house professionals to find more fulfilment in your career. And are there any common misconceptions, particularly thinking about in-house counsel or legal departments around the sustainability or ESG initiative?
I think if an in-house department hasn't gotten involved in the issue, it can feel a little overwhelming. The in-house counsel always has more work than they can do. They're always asked to be more efficient, and there's definitely a perception that jumping into this new area could challenge the ability to be efficient, and taking on new responsibilities is always feels overwhelming. But I think that the key is first, my advice is always just to start somewhere, and not to try to immediately start taking on everything, but just pick an area. And it could be, procurement is a great partnership. Are you getting vendors that are meeting the expectations? So that could be an easy place to start. The compliance angles could be an easy place to start. Figuring out how are we responding to client questions on this subject. That can be a starting point. And you don't have to do all three of those, but selecting one starting point and putting a toe in is how to get going if it's feeling a little bit overwhelming.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, even as an everyday human, you can it feels like a big thing to take on, but I think you're
Yeah,
totally right. Just starting somewhere. I mean, the hardest part is starting. So, and then you can kind of build on that. So,
exactly.
yeah, that makes total sense. So it's all, fine and dandy if you're a big legal department and maybe you've been tasked with setting up the ESG initiative for the company. Um, what if you're a smaller legal team? Can you still be involved in this sort of thing? And how would you go about tackling that?
I think there's always an opportunity to be involved, and certainly small companies aren't expected to have the full kind of build out program that you'd see in a global multinational. The starting point I always recommend is figure out who else in your company is interested in this. You may or may not have a dedicated role, but I guarantee you that there are folks across the company who want to engage in environmental and social issues, and then get together. It could be a single meeting in a room where you really look at, okay, what's the most important issue for our company, what's the most important challenge, and start there. And it could be focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It could be focused on environmental performance. But where is it that you're seeing your activities having potentially a larger impact on the world and on third parties? And what's the why behind your actions? In some cases, it could really be an employee motivational focused why, and bringing in top talent. Top talent does expect that you are thinking about and thoughtfully addressing these issues. It could be a customer based why, or it could be just that the company believes it is the right thing to do, and wants to follow those values. And there are also financial components, and doing a lot of the basic environmental sustainability pieces can help reduce costs, which every company cares about in increasing the bottom line.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask about the kind of common challenges that anyone wanting to begin this journey might come up against. And I guess you might have touched on one there, in terms of perhaps if the executives are a little less bought in than you might be, for instance. So, what are
Yeah.
the kind of common challenges, and how might you overcome those?
Yeah. I think that the business case for investment is always a common challenge. And in here, I recommend really partnering closely with your finance team, who's ever leading that. And it just like anything in a business, you have to be able to show a successful business case. In a lot of the environmental issues, if you can look at it and find what are your expenses, and if we are able to reduce our energy usage, what does that mean in terms of cost savings? Or travel, it can be an easy piece where, people aren't traveling as much today for sure, but if you look at it over the long term, if you can reduce your air travel, that also results in a significant cost savings. So finding those, what's the business, how the costs and benefits work, can be the most challenging step, but it's an important place to start. And like I said, employee retention and recruiting is key. So you see, today we have a significant talent war going on. It's affecting everybody. So looking at it is, how much do we think this is important in terms of getting and retaining talent in, and really the cost of losing talent is huge in this market. So you have to align the cost and benefits, and being able to articulate those and show them so it does make financial sense for the company.
And that's a super exciting and promising shift that we've seen from people who care about climate change and social issues being the minority not that long
Mhm.
ago to being almost the
Mhm.
masses. And it's a promising and exciting time to be involved and touch on that in any way that you can, I suppose.
Yes, I mean it's really important because this is I've seen it's a growing trend. I just saw it was actually a Harvard Business Review article and talking about how ESG went mainstream in 2021, and it's an area that the trend isn't going to go backwards. So it's something that it's important for companies again to start somewhere wherever you're at, and it could be that you're already have a program, and the focus point is improving it and staying up to date with the latest, and it could be that you haven't really started yet and you need to just start somewhere, but this is a long game.
Hmm.
This isn't a flash in the pan. So thinking about, okay, what is it, where do we want to be 5 years from now, where do we want to be 10 years from now? You see in the press, particularly around carbon, a lot of focus on 2030 because there's very set climate goals to keep us in line with a 1.5 degree limit on global warming. A lot of that is centered around 2030 goals. So it is really a long term game.
No matter the size of your legal department, there is an opportunity to get involved with ESG. Whether your motivations are environmental or to build your role as a strategic advisor, or both, the starting point for smaller legal teams or solo in-house lawyers is to find other people across the business who might be interested in the topic. Once you've found your ESG allies, brainstorm what topics are most important to your company. What ESG challenges exist in the context of your organisation? You might focus on diversity, equality and inclusion, or perhaps environmental performance. Think about where your activities are having a potentially large impact on the world and on third parties. If you're struggling with buy-in from executives, don't forget to highlight the business case for ESG, such as recruiting and retaining talent, winning new business, or switching to environmentally friendly practices that can save money and impact the bottom line in a positive way. What are the practical steps that small legal teams in particular can take to either, one, educate themselves more about this if they don't know too much, or two, of course, begin the journey?
Yeah, on the education piece, so I do a series on LinkedIn under the hashtag Sustainable Council. I've been doing that for about a year, and I try to gear a lot of my posts around just that question of like, where do you start? And I know I've done one in particular geared towards small companies. So if you go and search that hashtag, you'll find some basic starting advice on where to go. I think you also, looking at it from finding, what is a framework that that you can look at. So maybe look the it's called the GRI, would be a GRI framework. Is Google that, or look at what some of the top companies are doing, and figure out how to kind of shrink that down to your size. I always find, reading the sustainability reports from an IKEA or a Microsoft or something like that. Very few companies will be able to do as much as those companies are, but it gives you a full spectrum idea of what the issues are, that you can see, what's the most important to your company. So that definitely education is the starting point. And then I just recently did a post on this, but if you think about it, there is something that a lot of council are familiar with, is a risk management approach or a compliance approach that has common steps. So, first step, getting the key people together and identifying what the issues are. So putting those out on the table, deciding what you're going to focus on. Second step, going and collecting data to see where are you at. So this could be, collecting data on, how much carbon you're currently using. It could be, if it maybe waste is a large issue for your business. So going in and looking at how much waste are you actually generating. It could be a DEI measure. What's your current actual diversity makeup, or if you have a pay gap, what is that actual pay gap? So doing for your key issues, doing some measurements to see where you're at, then looking at it from a mitigation standpoint. Where you find issues that you want to make a difference on, what are your mitigations? So that's common to any kind of risk analysis. Setting your goals. So, okay, we figured out these are our key issues. Here are the mitigations we want to do. How are we going to measure it? And then transparently reporting on it to your key stakeholders. And that just it's a circular process. So you start with, you go through the circle once, and then you repeat it on an annual or biannual basis, and then over time you build a program. So I did, like I said, I just did a post on it with the 5 steps. But stakeholders, what are your key issues, measuring them, identifying your mitigations, setting your targets, and reporting. And you just go around that circle over and over, and you will have something that builds over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. And it's quite a lovely, clear process, which I
Yeah.
know I like to follow. So I'm sure lawyers and in-house would love to as well. In terms of doing that, is that something that they need to sit down and do immediately, or is it a gradual process? What type of approach is needed to take it? It's quite project
Yeah.
management, I imagine.
Yeah, it is a project management approach. So if it's something you're wanting to get into, I think, figuring out who those key people are, and setting a meeting, in the next month, that would be a really good goal to have.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you have that initial conversation, or if you have a program up and going, identifying who the key stakeholders are, and setting the time to learn what's already happening. So getting the conversation going in the next 30 days would be an excellent goal to have at this point. And then from there, you can figure out, what the timeline is. I would suggest that, you try to get through, those 5 steps every year, and have it at a paced schedule, every year, figure out what that looks like. So, not all, you don't have to be, completely done with your KPIs and your public reporting by, the end of February, but figure out how to pace it over the year.
Yeah, that makes sense. Manageable chunks.
Exactly. I think the risk is really feeling so overwhelmed that you do nothing.
Yeah.
And so figuring out what you can do and how you can do it on a manageable basis is the key.
So, how can you create an ESG program for your business? Here are a few steps to help you get started. 1. Identify your stakeholders. Bring together key people needed for success, including operational leaders, HR, finance, and employee representatives. 2. Assess impacts. What are the environmental, social, and governance impact of your operations to the planet and third parties? I'm talking carbon emissions, water usage, labour standards, diversity, etc. 3. Gather data. To improve ESG factors, you must know your starting point. This requires reliable data and a system that enables repeatable measurement. 4. Plan mitigations. Select 3 to 5 areas to improve and create a plan for how to reduce or mitigate your impact. 5. Create KPIs. Change won't happen overnight, but it will happen if you set measurable goals and work towards them consistently. 6. Report transparently. Internal and external stakeholders expect progress, not perfection. So share your journeys, include accomplishments and the setbacks. Lastly, repeat. Especially for small legal teams, it's about making incremental improvements. So work through this process and repeat it over time. And I suppose to finish up, what can we expect in the future and what trends might we see in terms of ESG in relation to in-house?
So I think we're going to see a few key trends. So the larger companies are going to what's called a net zero standard. So that what that really means is that by 2050, and they might set a sooner date, they want to have their carbon emissions, really reduced to that rate that's consistent with the 1.5 degrees or net, basically a net zero carbon emissions. And so you're going to see, if you do work with those larger companies in order to hit that standard, you're going to see an increase in need to be able to engage in carbon reporting. Or if you're at a larger company, a push towards releasing that kind of goal. And it's a big, it's a big lift. In order to do that, you really have to have a strategy and a roadmap in place. So I think that's going to be a trend. Absolutely, more regulation is coming down the pike. This is more I'd say more aggressive regulation in Europe. That a lot of the regulations you see coming out, like the German Supply Chain Act, which regulates how companies that are headquartered in Germany manage their supply chains, can be substantive. A lot of the other regulations are more about transparency. I know California has done this for California. For California filed organizations of a certain size, where they have to engage in transparent reporting. So keeping an eye on those regulations for council is going to be really critical. Then a third trend that I think will be very interesting, particularly in light of we just had the anniversary of the Capitol riots last year. We're going to see companies of all sizes, I think, increasingly pushed to take positions on social issues. So for a long time, companies really preferred to stay out of taking, positions that could be perceived as political on social issues. And that's just becoming not an option, really, for companies to sit on the sidelines in terms of public statements. So greater pressure there from employees, from clients, from all of your stakeholders, and that one's very tough to manage, very challenging. But companies need to know that's the reality. So get in place, what your key values are, and how you'll respond to those pressures.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That makes complete sense. And I think, especially if in-house lawyers or legal teams more generally are getting involved with these things, I think the leadership team and the likes will be thankful down the line, as it's
Yeah.
just going to be something
Yes.
that you'll have to do at some point, regardless.
Yes.
Yeah,
No, nobody, everybody likes a little bit of advanced thinking when it saves others headaches and time and trouble.
exactly. For sure. Amazing. Well, I think that's mostly everything I was hoping to cover today. Obviously, it's a super, super important topic and things, and it's great to see so many more companies tackling this and smaller legal teams thinking about it as well. So, are there any final parting messages you'd like to share?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm very optimistic about the future. I know we have a lot of challenges, but I believe that with the level of engagement and commitment we're seeing, that we can make a difference, particularly in business. If we have a focus on this, I think we have a huge opportunity to really make a difference at a global level. So, my overall advice is, absolutely in-house counsel should be getting involved in ESG issues and encouraging their companies to put in place programs that lead to a strong ESG program. And, if you're not involved, just start somewhere.
Yeah, for sure. I love it. What a great note to end on. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing all your wisdom as well, because you're quite a specialist in the subject. And we'll be sure
Yeah,
to link to your LinkedIn as well, so people can see the sustainable council tips and whatnot. So thank you so much.
wonderful. Thank you for having me.
No worries.